Welcome to the Holy Earth podcast, where we share faithful, factual, and fun discussions about Earth stewardship and creation care. I'm your host, Lydia Theobald.
And I'm your host, Phil Fernberg. In this introductory episode, we'll introduce the Holy Earth podcast, what it's about, what we hope to accomplish, and what listeners can expect from the show.
Phil, what are you hoping we can accomplish with this podcast?
So many things. I would say one of them is I just really want to hear people's stories from around the world on what their own personal understanding and meaning of Earth stewardship is. And I want to, through those stories, hopefully have someone somewhere in the world be so moved that they do something different, do something that they never would have otherwise thought they would do in their life to be a better steward. I just remember that I've had so many experiences where something, whether it was a podcast, a movie, a song that moved me to think about the world in a different way, to think about my relationship to my creator, to the beautiful earth that he's given me to inhabit and be a part of, and that I should maybe think and act differently about that relationship. So that's what I'm hoping we get out of this.
That's
what about
beautiful. A lot of the same things. I want this podcast to be a source of hope for our listeners. I want them to feel like they're understanding Earth stewardship better. And I also want to, understand better how I can care for the earth. I want this podcast to be a source of hope where people can listen and feel hopeful and excited about how to care for the earth. I want this to be a source of faith in Jesus Christ for our listeners, where they can listen and feel closer to God. And I just want it to be a source of community where people feel like they're joining hands with other people who care about the earth.
I love what you said there, because there were two things that stuck out when you said hope and faith. So important in where we're at in the world right now. There's so many complex things happening. And it makes it easy, I think, for people to feel not hopeful, nihilistic, pessimistic, and also feel that maybe sometimes their faith tradition or the cultures that they've been a part of don't see Christ and faith in him and his plan as connected to care for the earth. And both of those things are just blatantly false in my mind, right? And I hope that this podcast can correct for that. I really love what you said that. How did you come to care about Earth stewardship? What's your story to getting there?
I think there's 1,000 experiences I could share, but if I were to boil it down to just a few things, I would say I think the beauty of the earth has always been the entry point for me to care about it. I think beauty is so inherently meaningful and valuable. God could have created a very utilitarian world where everything was colorless and just very functional. But instead we get thousands of species of butterflies and all these different incredible, just this variety, this abundant variety of creation. And that's meaningful and purposeful. And so I think just the earth being so beautiful has always been just such a meaningful and lovely thing for me. And just from the time I was little, I've had so many experiences being out in nature. I remember a creek by my house where I would go ride my bike over there and then play in the water and feel the squishy clay beneath my feet and sit on a rock under a willow tree. That was just such a formative time. And since then, I feel like I've had 1,000 experiences in nature, just feeling God, feeling the power of the beauty of the earth. And there's a part of me that is so passionate about creating clean systems. I think that's like an important moral imperative, that we have these sustainable long-term systems. I really love the appeal of zero waste living and minimalism and composting, and just imagining like closing the circuit where there's no waste. That feels so beautiful and true and important to me. So those are things that I love about creation. And as far as how I got involved with this organization and everything, in college, I took a class from George Handley and just felt like I was at home among these poets like Mary Oliver and authors like Annie Dillard and Edward Abbey, and just realizing that there was a whole community of people who care about earth stewardship, and that I could be a part of that was so meaningful. And I got to do a research project where I went through the scriptures looking for doctrine about stewardship. And that was so eye-opening to see that I always had felt that it was doctrinal. And so to confirm that and to say, here's this scripture that says that we need to love the earth in this way was incredible.
I love that. And that's good thing that you bring up. We should probably clarify for folks of when we're talking about doctrine. This podcast is supported by a nonprofit organization called Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, which is adjacent to, but not necessarily affiliated with, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So when you're talking doctrine, and you mentioned BYU or Brigham Young University and an eco-criticism professor there, George Hanley, and the organization you mentioned earlier, we're talking LDSES or Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is connected to that. And you were talking about searching scriptures under that faith tradition. And I feel very, very similar to you in a couple of ways. Having early childhood memories, being in the landscape, in the environment. For me, it was the ocean. I grew up in Southern California, San Diego area. I grew up going to the ocean. I lived fairly nearby. And I was always enamored with where coast meets the sea, and this idea that it's this transitional landscape from where me, a land lover, can go in and be in an expanse of something that people understand space better than this body of water that we live right next to, and always feeling so small, but in a good way, in that I was part of this amazing, incredible community of organisms that were all trying to habitate this area of Earth, and we all had symbiotic relationships. We're contributing to each other's well-being. And later that really played out as I was working on ships. I had an opportunity to be an entertainer on cruise ships, and I remember specifically one day off the coast of Vietnam and being right next to a container port and seeing in this container port there was across the way just dense, thick jungle, just delta jungle. It was amazing. It was this incredible, wild-looking landscape. And then on the other side, just the bastion of industry. There's just concrete jungle everywhere, not a tree in sight. Container ports that were dirty. You could see oil flowing and spilling from things. You could see unkempt, shipping containers. Some of them had trash flowing that were going into the river. And I just thought, what a juxtaposition. How is it that we can make such hard lines when it's all one earth?
Yeah.
Why do we try and border it up like that? Why can't we figure out a way to better marry these things? We can have human flourishing and development, civilization, but also remember our wild roots and have these things coexist, because they've always been coexisting.
Yeah.
I love that, and I can really relate to that. A lot of my career has been that way too. I've been in environment. I teach as a landscape and environmental planning professor up at Utah State University. But what brought me here is really the organization of Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship. It's the sponsor organization of this podcast, and it is a convener organization, I like to call it. So the mission of Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, which I also happen to currently be the chair of the board for, is to honor God by learning and living principles of earth stewardship. And so we learn in all sorts of ways. We have people on to come tell their stories in events like our fall forum, which happens every year. And we gather hundreds of people to listen to a great mind talk about the relationship between faith and creation care, or online resources that they provide, the Latter-day Saint tradition. And we also try to live it through service. And there are chapters we have all over the world doing incredible things, whether that's interfaith gatherings in Europe to better understand all of the faith traditions and their ways of looking at the earth and our care for it, or people that are getting their hands dirty, restoring native plant gardens, restoring mangroves to help with storm surge in the Philippines. There's a variety of things that organization does, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. You, I think, are involved a little bit too. You're in one of our local chapters, aren't you?
Yeah. So I first started at BYU when it was just BYU Earth Stewardship down there, and then became a part of the Salt Lake chapter as the social media coordinator for a while, and recently just shifted into the role of education coordinator, and this podcast is a big part of that. And it's just been so cool to see all the different aspects that you mentioned, how those have personally enriched me and my ability to care for the earth, as I've helped with service projects and learned from different people. And I just feel like the word sustainability guide is so cool. There's just so many amazing resources that Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship has put into my life. And so I'm grateful that that's an organization that people are able to learn from.
Yeah. Thanks, Lydia. It was good hearing a little bit about your story. what brings us together, what brings this podcast about. Let's talk a little bit now to the viewers about what you can expect from the podcast. Do you want to tell them a little bit about how the structure will be?
So every episode will start with some good news in stewardship, and then we'll interview an interesting guest who has some expertise to share about Earth stewardship. And then we'll end with addressing any questions or concerns that you as viewers have sent in. And we would really love to hear from you, comments or questions you have about Earth stewardship, where you're at in your journey as an Earth steward, and we'd love to engage with you in that way.
The beauty of starting a podcast that doesn't have any history really is that we can build it together if we so please. And we really do want to build it with you. Let us know who we should bring on, what we should talk about, what kinds of questions we should ask, maybe even fun things that we'll learn about Lydia's storied past. And with that, we invite you to be a part of the conversation and to listen to the Holy Earth podcast.
If you enjoyed this discussion or found it helpful, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please feel free to share your thoughts by commenting on YouTube or by emailing us at hello@holyearthpodcast.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Holy Earth Podcast.
And if you would like to get involved with Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, visit our website at ldsearthstewardship.org. Sign up for our newsletter and see how you can get involved in local activities in your area. You can also find us on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram.